Hello Zenith women and welcome to the channel. In a world that demands obedience, the greatest act of rebellion is simply being yourself. Society thrives on labels, rules, and a nice, tidy order where everyone knows their place. But then come Sigma females, women who refuse to play by the script. They don't crave applause, they don't need approval, and they definitely don't care about fitting in. And here's the kicker. Their independence isn't just intimidating, it's downright revolutionary. Here's a fact to blow your mind. Independent thinkers are statistically more likely to challenge societal norms and disrupt systems. Now imagine a woman who's not only independent but thrives outside every box society tries to shove her into. She's not loud, but her presence screams power. She's not aggressive, but her silence feels like a challenge. Sigma females make people uncomfortable because they represent what most fear: freedom without compromise. And society? Well, it's terrified of what it can't control. But it secretly knows it can't survive without them. Because without a Sigma female, who's going to make sense of the madness? Number one, they expose mediocrity by just being themselves. Most people are comfortable doing the bare minimum because it's easier to blend in and avoid criticism. Mediocrity is safe, it doesn't ask for too much effort, and society has conveniently normalized it. But then comes a Sigma female, walking into the room with her unshakable standards, relentless drive, and refusal to settle for good enough. She doesn't have to say anything, her actions speak louder. Her presence alone can make people painfully aware of how much they've been coasting, and that's exactly why society fears her. A Sigma female doesn't accept mediocrity, not in herself, and certainly not in those around her. She doesn't settle for half-hearted efforts, superficial connections, or easy answers. She holds herself to a standard so high that it exposes the excuses and laziness that most people have been hiding behind. Watching her succeed on her own terms is a brutal reminder to others of what they could achieve if they stopped cutting corners and playing small. This isn't about arrogance or showing off. She's not out to prove anything to anyone. That's the part that stings the most. She's just being herself. Her drive isn't fueled by competition or a need to impress. It's a genuine desire to live fully and authentically. Society doesn't know how to handle someone who isn't motivated by its usual carrots: approval, recognition, or fitting in. She's proof that greatness doesn't come from following the rules or staying in your lane. By simply existing, she shines a glaring light on how average everything around her has become. She's a mirror people don't want to look into because it forces them to confront their own complacency. That's why society fears her. She makes mediocrity impossible to ignore, and that's an uncomfortable truth no one likes to face. Number two, they reject the idea that success looks the same for everyone. Society is obsessed with its one-size-fits-all definition of success. Climb the corporate ladder, earn a fat paycheck, own a house, and maybe throw in some awards for good measure. It's a checklist everyone's expected to follow, a formula that conveniently keeps people striving for the same predictable goals. But Sigma females? They toss that checklist right into the trash. They refuse to let society dictate what success should look like, and that's where the real disruption begins. For a Sigma female, success is deeply personal. It's not about ticking off boxes or chasing titles that impress others. It's about finding purpose and fulfillment on her own terms. She doesn't care if her life looks unconventional or if her achievements make sense to anyone else. To her, success could mean building a quiet, meaningful life away from the spotlight, mastering a creative skill no one else values, or simply having the freedom to live authentically. This rejection of the cookie-cutter model is unsettling to those who've blindly followed it their entire lives. When someone like a Sigma female steps out of the mold and thrives, it forces others to ask uncomfortable questions. Why am I chasing this? Do I even want this life I'm building? Her ability to redefine success challenges the very system society is built on. It's not just that Sigma females think differently. It's that their choices expose how shallow and arbitrary society's expectations can be. When someone proves that you don't need to follow the rules to live a fulfilling life, it destabilizes the entire structure. People fear what they don't understand, and a Sigma female's refusal to conform makes her a walking contradiction to everything they've been told to value. Number 3, they're proof that loneliness isn't a weakness. In a world that treats loneliness like a disease to be cured, Sigma females stand out as proof that being alone isn't a sign of weakness. It's a source of power. While society equates solitude with failure, rejection, or even inadequacy, Sigma females see it as an opportunity. They don't just endure time alone, they embrace it, using it as a chance to reflect, recharge, and grow. This quiet self-sufficiency terrifies a world that constantly pushes people to seek external validation. For a Sigma female, solitude isn't a void to fill. It's a sanctuary. It's in the stillness where she gains clarity, hones her focus, and refines her goals. She doesn't need noise, distractions, or the constant approval of others to feel whole. Her ability to thrive alone reveals a truth that society often avoids. Happiness isn't found in how many people surround you, but in how comfortable you are with yourself. This perspective makes people uneasy. Many are terrified of being alone because they've been taught that solitude equals isolation, which equals failure. Sigma females flip that script entirely. They show that solitude is where real strength is born, where self-awareness deepens, and where individuality flourishes. Their independence forces others to confront their own fear of being alone, and that's an uncomfortable reality most would rather avoid. More importantly, Sigma females dismantle the myth that success or happiness requires constant companionship. By thriving on their own, they challenge the narrative that you need others to complete you. And in doing so, they reveal something that society doesn't want to admit. The fear of loneliness isn't about being alone. It's about being afraid to face yourself. Number 4, they expose the flaws in patriarchal systems. Patriarchal systems thrive on the idea that women need to be protected, guided, or supported to succeed. It's a structure designed to keep power dynamics firmly in place, with men as the providers and women as the dependents. But Sigma females, they obliterate that narrative just by existing. Independent, confident, and self-reliant, they live as proof that women don't need to be saved, fixed, or placed into restrictive roles. This is more than unsettling for a system that relies on these outdated dynamics. It's a full-blown existential threat. Sigma females operate outside the script. They don't wait for permission to chase their goals, don't look for validation from authority figures, and certainly don't rely on anyone else to define their worth. In doing so, they expose just how unnecessary patriarchal systems really are. They don't need to play the damsel or conform to roles designed to keep them dependent, and that independence is like a wrench thrown into the carefully constructed machine of traditional power structures. What makes this so threatening is that Sigma females aren't loud revolutionaries. They don't scream for equality or demand change. They simply live their lives on their own terms, quietly dismantling the system by proving it irrelevant. This subtle rebellion forces people to confront an uncomfortable truth. These structures weren't built to empower women, but to limit them. And when you see someone thriving without relying on them, it becomes impossible to ignore their flaws. The real fear lies in the ripple effect. A Sigma female's unapologetic independence plants seeds of doubt in others, making them question why these systems even exist. And as more women embrace that same independence, the patriarchal foundation starts to crumble, not because it was attacked, but because it was never as strong as it claimed to be. Number 5, they're more logical than emotional when it matters. Society has long clung to the stereotype that women are primarily emotional decision-makers, often implying that logic isn't their strong suit. Enter Sigma females, who shatter that narrative with cold, calculated precision. When the stakes are high and emotions are running wild, they don't crumble under pressure or let feelings cloud their judgment. Instead, they rely on logic and strategy to navigate the chaos, often outsmarting those who underestimate them in the process. This ability to stay calm and methodical in challenging situations is more than a personal trait. It's a direct challenge to outdated gender stereotypes. When a Sigma female steps into a high-pressure scenario and handles it with razor-sharp clarity, it leaves people stunned, especially those who were expecting her to be swayed by sentiment. The fact that she can tap into emotional intelligence when needed but prioritize logic when it matters makes her a force to be reckoned with. Her composure is particularly unsettling because it dismantles society's comfort zone. People like to believe they've figured others out, that they can predict reactions based on stereotypes. A Sigma female disrupts this entirely. She doesn't respond the way people expect. She doesn't let panic or personal bias dictate her actions. Instead, she approaches challenges like a chessboard, thinking several moves ahead and always playing to win, not for applause, but because it's what she does. This strategic mindset makes her not only unpredictable, but deeply intimidating. People can't manipulate her with emotional appeals or provoke her into rash decisions. She's unshakable, and that makes her a genuine threat to those who rely on exploiting emotional weakness. Society may not be ready to admit it, but this balance of logic and emotion is exactly what makes Sigma females so formidable and so necessary. Number 6, they're masters of self-control. In a world that thrives on instant reactions, emotional outbursts, and impulsive decisions, Sigma females are like a quiet storm, unshaken, calculated, and composed. They don't explode in anger, break down under pressure, or let their emotions hijack their behavior. Instead, they've mastered the art of self-control, and that level of restraint is downright unnerving to a society that often thrives on chaos. Drama is practically a currency in today's world, and society expects everyone to buy in. But Sigma females? They don't play that game. When provoked, they don't lash out. When chaos erupts, they don't contribute to the noise. Their ability to stay calm in situations that would rattle most people gives them a kind of unspoken authority. They're not controlled by external circumstances or other people's behavior, and that level of self-mastery is a rare and powerful skill. What makes this so intimidating is how unpredictable it makes them. When someone refuses to react emotionally, they're impossible to manipulate. People thrive on knowing how to push buttons, but with a Sigma female, there are no buttons to push. Her calm demeanor forces others to confront their own lack of control, and it's uncomfortable to realize how much power they've handed over to fleeting emotions or social pressures. Her restraint isn't about suppressing her feelings, it's about knowing when and how to channel them. She picks her battles carefully, never wasting energy on things that don't matter. And when she does act, it's always intentional and impactful. That's what makes her so powerful. Her silence speaks louder than most people's noise, and her ability to stay composed in any situation makes her a force no one can ignore. Society thrives on predictable reactions, and Sigma females thrive on keeping society guessing. Number 7, they operate in the shadows but hold power. While alphas relish the spotlight, constantly asserting their dominance and making sure everyone knows their status, Sigma females prefer the shadows, quiet, calculated, and out of the public eye. They aren't interested in flaunting their power or seeking validation from anyone. Instead, they build their influence from behind the scenes, carefully weaving connections, making strategic moves, and observing from a distance. This preference for operating under the radar makes them a mystery to those around them, and forces society to try and understand a person who refuses to be categorized. The Sigma female's power doesn't need to be announced. It's felt. She doesn't demand attention or recognition, yet somehow she's always in control when it matters most. Whether she's leading a project, influencing decisions, or silently guiding people with her quiet wisdom, her presence is undeniable. The difference is, she doesn't require applause for her work or need her name in lights. Her power is self-contained, rooted in her ability to navigate situations without drawing attention to herself. This stealthy approach makes her unpredictable. You can't track her moves the way you could with someone who's always in the public eye. She doesn't need to follow the rules of showmanship or make a spectacle of her actions. That unpredictability keeps people on edge. They can't predict her next move or fully understand what she's capable of because she's always working from the shadows. In a world that prizes visibility and public dominance, the Sigma female is the ultimate enigma. She's a quiet force whose influence is felt far beyond what anyone can see, and it's this subtle yet undeniable power that makes her such a fascinating and fearsome presence in a society obsessed with loud displays of strength. Number 8. They force others to confront their insecurities. Sigma females have a quiet, almost unnerving ability to expose the insecurities of others without saying a word. Their very existence shines a spotlight on the things most people would rather keep buried, those fears, doubts, and unspoken frustrations that others prefer to ignore. With their independence, self-assuredness, and refusal to conform to society's narrow expectations, they become a mirror for those around them. When people see a Sigma female confidently walking her own path, doing things her way, it forces them to confront the freedom they've denied themselves. This isn't about direct confrontation or criticism. Sigma females don't actively try to call out anyone or point fingers. They don't need to. Their presence alone is enough to make people question their choices, their lives, and most importantly, the ways they've limited themselves. Watching someone embrace total autonomy can be an uncomfortable reminder that not everyone has resigned themselves to mediocrity or the status quo. It makes others ask, why am I stuck in this cycle? Why haven't I broken free? The fear that Sigma females evoke isn't about hostility. It's about the stark contrast they create. They represent what could be a life led by their own rules, free from the chains of societal expectations. That kind of freedom is terrifying to those who feel trapped by their own insecurities. And so, rather than feeling inspired, they feel exposed. Sigma females don't need to say a word to do this. They don't have to act superior or make others feel small. They simply exist, and in doing so, they make others face the uncomfortable truths about the limitations they've placed on themselves. Number 9. They defy control without even trying. Sigma females have a unique ability to defy control without even lifting a finger. It's not out of a need for rebellion or to stir up trouble. It's simply because they live by their own set of rules. Unlike the majority who play by society's script, Sigma females write their own. They move through the world with a sense of autonomy that makes it impossible for anyone to box them in, predict their behavior, or manipulate them into doing something they don't want to do. This defiance is unnerving to a society that thrives on conformity and control. In a world where most people follow the same patterns, follow orders, and stay within boundaries, Sigma females are like a variable that refuses to be controlled. They're not interested in climbing the social ladder, bowing to authority, or fitting into predetermined roles. This lack of willingness to be influenced makes them unpredictable. And that's precisely what makes them so frightening to those in power. People are used to knowing how to control others, whether through social expectations, pressure, or manipulation. But with Sigma females, there are no predictable responses. Their autonomy is their strength, and the way they navigate life on their own terms makes them an unpredictable force that no system can contain or dictate. This freedom is not only a testament to their inner strength, but a constant reminder to society that it can't control everything or everyone. And that's precisely why Sigma females are so terrifying to a world that thrives on control and predictability. Number 10. They don't need validation, so you can't manipulate them. Sigma females live in a world that thrives on validation. The likes, the comments, the external recognition that most people crave to feel seen and heard. But here's the catch: they don't need it. It's as if they've cracked the code to not needing approval. And once you realize that, it becomes clear. They can't be manipulated. While the majority of people bend to the pressure of fitting in, seeking approval, or playing the game to keep others happy, Sigma females operate entirely outside of that system. Peer pressure doesn't affect them. Guilt-tripping or societal shaming, water off a duck's back. They're immune to these tactics because their sense of self-worth is entirely internal. This is a direct threat to a society that relies on the collective need for validation to maintain its influence. The moment someone realizes they don't need the validation of others, they become incredibly hard to control. Sigma females can't be steered with guilt or social pressure because they simply don't care about fitting in or impressing anyone. They've already built a sense of self that is rock solid, without needing to be bolstered by external approval. For society, this makes Sigma females unpredictable and difficult to manage. If you can't manipulate someone by offering praise or threatening shame, they become a wild card, a force that can't be swayed or influenced in the ways others can. That kind of power, being free from the constraints of validation, is something that society fears, and yet desperately needs more of. Because in a world that thrives on social games and conformity, those who refuse to play by the rules are the ones who truly hold the power. Sigma females are the quiet disruptors in a world that thrives on noise and conformity. They don't seek the spotlight, yet their presence forces others to reckon with their own limitations, insecurities, and outdated beliefs. Independent, self-assured, and operating under the radar, they carve their own path, breaking free from the conventional molds society tries to impose. While others chase validation, status, and approval, Sigma females build real power through strategic thinking, self-control, and an unwavering commitment to their own truth. They're not afraid to challenge the status quo, to expose the flaws in traditional power dynamics, or to show that strength doesn't have to be loud. And that's what makes them so formidable. Their very existence makes people question their own choices, forcing them to confront uncomfortable truths they'd rather ignore. Sigma females embody the freedom that many fear to embrace, proving that true power lies not in seeking attention, but in mastering self-reliance and living authentically. Society may fear them because they defy its expectations, but deep down, it knows it needs them, because they're the ones who dare to remind everyone of the endless possibilities that lie beyond the comfortable confines of convention. If you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who recognizes the power of independent thought and authentic living. So don't let this moment slip away. Hit that subscribe button and join a community that doesn't just follow trends, but challenges them. Be part of the conversation because the world needs more people who aren't afraid to think differently. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Subscribe now, and let's continue disrupting the status quo together.